Welcome to Global Watch. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. In a stunning and unprecedented decision, the U.S. Supreme Court has officially struck down the tariffs imposed by former President Donald Trump, sending shockwaves through the political and economic landscape. The ruling, which comes after months of heated legal battles and intense public debate, marks a dramatic turning point in the ongoing struggle over presidential power and trade policy. In their majority opinion, the justices declared that the executive branch overstepped its constitutional authority by enacting sweeping tariffs without explicit approval from Congress, setting a powerful new precedent for the limits of presidential action. The verdict has dismantled a key pillar of Trump's economic policy, which was built on aggressive trade measures, and has thrown global markets into turmoil. Investors are scrambling to assess the long-term consequences, as stock exchanges from New York to Tokyo experience wild swings and uncertainty grips the financial world. Currencies are swinging wildly, with the US dollar dropping against major rivals. Business leaders worldwide are scrambling to respond, holding emergency meetings to reassess strategies. The United States now faces a potential trillion-dollar liability in tariff refunds, raising questions about the government's ability to manage the economic fallout. The court's ruling is clear: no president can unilaterally impose sweeping tariffs without the direct involvement and approval of Congress. This decision reasserts the balance of power between the branches of government and could reshape how future administrations approach trade and economic policy. Across the country, reactions are deeply divided. Some hail this as a long-overdue restoration of constitutional order and a victory for checks and balances. Others warn it's a blow to U.S. economic sovereignty, arguing that it could weaken America's ability to respond quickly to global threats and challenges. The impact is immediate and far-reaching. Supply chains are being disrupted, prices for everyday goods are in flux, and business plans across multiple industries are being rewritten overnight. Companies that relied on tariff protections are now facing new competition, while importers anticipate relief. Tonight, we break down what this historic ruling means for you, your family, the nation, and the world at large. We'll explore how this decision could affect jobs, prices, and America's role in the global economy, and what it signals for the future of presidential power. We'll hear directly from affected businesses, from small shop owners to multinational corporations, and get insights from leading experts who are already trying to predict what comes next in this rapidly evolving situation. The Supreme Court has spoken, but the fallout is just beginning. As the nation grapples with the consequences, one thing is certain: the debate over presidential power, trade, and America's economic future is far from over. To grasp today's ruling, let's rewind. Trump's tariffs, announced in April 2025, aim to rebalance trade and fight the fentanyl crisis, invoking emergency powers under IEEPA. The administration bypassed Congress, imposing sweeping duties on imports, sparking fierce opposition from U.S. businesses. Over 700 companies, calling themselves "We Pay the Tariffs," sued, arguing the tariffs were unpredictable, costly, and unconstitutional. Lower courts sided with the businesses, ruling the president had exceeded his authority. The government appealed, insisting the president needed flexibility to address national security threats. This legal battle set up a fundamental question for the Supreme Court: where does presidential power end and Congress's authority over commerce begin? The fate of trillions in global trade hung in the balance. The Supreme Court case at hand was about far more than just economics or trade policy. It was a pivotal moment that would test the very structure of American government, raising fundamental questions about the limits of presidential authority and the balance of power among the branches. At its core, this was a test of the separation of powers, a principle that has defined the United States since its founding. The outcome would determine whether the president could act unilaterally in the name of national security, or if Congress alone held the ultimate authority over economic policy. The government's legal team argued that the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, gave the president sweeping authority to respond to foreign threats using economic measures, including tariffs. They claimed that in a rapidly changing world, the executive branch needed flexibility to act decisively and protect American interests. But the "We Pay the Tariffs" coalition, made up of businesses, workers, and lawmakers, pushed back forcefully. They argued that only Congress has the constitutional power to impose taxes and duties, and that IEEPA was never intended to justify permanent sweeping tariffs that could reshape the entire economy. They warned that allowing the president to wield such power unchecked would set a dangerous precedent, undermining the role of Congress and threatening the delicate balance envisioned by the framers of the Constitution. During oral arguments, justices from across the ideological spectrum expressed deep skepticism about the idea of unchecked executive power. They pressed both sides on the potential consequences, probing the limits of presidential authority and the risks of overreach. Justice Barrett, in particular, raised practical concerns about the logistics of issuing massive refunds if the tariffs were struck down, highlighting the real-world impact such a decision could have on businesses, workers, and the broader economy. The government warned that overturning the tariffs could trigger economic chaos, sending shockwaves through financial markets and undermining America's ability to respond to global threats. But the opposition insisted that the Constitution must prevail, even in times of uncertainty. They argued that the rule of law and the separation of powers are what make the United States resilient in the face of crisis. The court now faced a dramatic and historic choice. Should it uphold the rule of law and reinforce the boundaries of presidential power, or prioritize economic stability in a turbulent world? The decision they would reach would not only resolve a legal dispute, but also reshape the boundaries of presidential power for generations to come. In a landmark decision, the Supreme Court's 6-3 ruling declared the entire tariff regime unconstitutional, overturning years of trade policy with a single sweeping judgment. The courtroom was tense as the justices read their opinions, fully aware of the far-reaching consequences their decision would unleash. Almost instantly, the news sent shockwaves through global financial markets. Investors scrambled to react and the atmosphere on Wall Street turned chaotic. Stock futures plunged within minutes of the announcement, with the Dow Jones projected to open down over 1,000 points, erasing months of gains in a matter of hours. The sell-off was swift and brutal, as uncertainty gripped traders and analysts alike. The U.S. Treasury now faces the daunting prospect of refunding nearly $200 billion in tariffs collected from businesses and consumers. Officials rushed to assess the scale of the financial fallout, knowing that such a massive outflow could destabilize government finances. Former President Trump, who championed the tariffs, called the decision a national security event, warning of economic devastation and accusing the court of undermining American interests. Meanwhile, opponents of the tariffs celebrated the ruling as a victory for free trade and constitutional checks and balances. They hailed the decision as a turning point, predicting lower consumer costs, renewed global stability, and improved relations with trading partners. Many hoped this would mark the end of costly trade wars, but supporters of the tariffs decried the ruling as judicial overreach, arguing that it stripped the executive branch of vital tools to protect American industries and jobs. The federal budget is now in crisis, as lawmakers and officials confront the sudden loss of a massive revenue stream that had funded key programs and initiatives. With billions in revenue wiped out overnight, agencies are bracing for deep cuts and urgent budget negotiations. Congress, already deeply divided along partisan lines, must now step in to rewrite trade policy from scratch. The political battle ahead promises to be fierce and unpredictable. Across the country, businesses face new uncertainty as they scramble to navigate the complex process of refunds and adapt to rapidly shifting regulations. Many worry about the long-term impact on their operations and supply chains. The future of American trade is more unpredictable than ever, with the nation standing at a crossroads, uncertain, divided, and bracing for what comes next. The Supreme Court's decision detonated a bomb in the U.S. economy. The government faces up to $1 trillion in tariff refunds, blowing a hole in the national budget. The loss of projected tariff revenue forces lawmakers to consider spending cuts, tax hikes, or more debt. For consumers, imported goods may get cheaper, but market chaos and job losses could offset those gains. Industries reliant on imports like automakers may benefit, while domestic producers face new competition and possible layoffs. Years of supply chain adjustments are now upended. Businesses crave predictability, but uncertainty reigns. Will Congress act? How fast will refunds come? No one knows. The economic trajectory of the nation hangs in the balance. The only certainty, turbulence ahead. The Supreme Court's ruling sent shockwaves through global markets. Asian and European stocks tumbled as investors scrambled to assess the fallout. The US dollar wobbled, and countries like China saw a sudden advantage as tariffs vanished. But the abrupt policy reversal creates new headaches. Should exporters pivot back to the US or keep diversifying? Allies and rivals alike must rethink trade negotiations, now thrown into limbo. the ruling questions America's reliability as a trade partner. Some nations may accelerate efforts to reduce dependence on the US and build regional blocs. The World Trade Organization may try to reassert itself, but global order is in flux. The only constant uncertainty. The world is watching to see how America responds. Behind the headlines, small businesses bore the brunt of the tariff war. Entrepreneurs like Rick Muscat of Deerstag saw costs soar overnight, forcing tough choices: raise prices, cut staff, or automate. Greenbar Distillery paid steep tariffs on essential imports, struggling to plan amid ever-changing rules. The unpredictability was as damaging as the cost, freezing hiring and investment. Now, with tariffs gone, a new challenge emerges: navigating the complex refund process. Customs brokers face a mountain of paperwork and staff shortages. For many, today's ruling is vindication, but not relief. The fight for survival continues. Years of turmoil have tested their resilience. The path forward is uncertain, but hope is returning. These stories remind us, real people, not just numbers, are at stake. Experts agree, this is a landmark legal moment. The Supreme Court has redrawn the boundaries of presidential power, forcing future administrations to work with Congress on trade. Some warn this could limit the president's ability to respond to real emergencies. Politically, the decision is explosive, fuel for both sides in upcoming elections. Congress now faces pressure to craft new trade laws, a process sure to be contentious. Economists are split, some predict long-term growth and lower inflation, others fear recession and industry damage. The only consensus, volatility and disruption, are here to stay. The US is entering a period of profound transition. The legal, political, and economic landscape has shifted. The consequences will shape the nation for years to come. The Supreme Court's decision ends one era and begins another, uncertain and fraught with risk. Congress must now step up and define America's trade policy. Businesses and consumers face turbulence, but also opportunity. The world is watching. Will lawmakers rise to the challenge or let uncertainty fester? The debate over trade in America's global role is just beginning a new chapter. The choices made now will shape the nation's future. Stay informed, stay engaged. These decisions affect us all. The path forward is uncharted. What happens next is up to us.